You're listening to the He Shoots, He Draws podcast, the show about photography, design, creativity, and more, with your hosts Dave Clayton and Alan Hess.
Hi and welcome to a very special edition of He Shoots, He Draws. I'm going to call it a special one because I've got a special guest. It's a man who needs no introduction, but he's getting one anyway. A very good friend of mine and also someone who I learnt from over many years, even though we're very close in age. But Dave Cross is my guest tonight, and he was one of the original Photoshop guys when I first joined NAPP. And learnt so much off them, and also he was the first instructor I ever got to meet and chat to at my first Photoshop world. So
that's right.
I'm just glad we kind of hit off and sharing the same cool initials as well. But no,
right.
welcome Dave, it's good to have you on. Now, the last time we had you on, we were talking about a very specific thing, and we're back here again to talk about your new event, but before we do, can you just tell the listeners who wouldn't have heard the previous episodes what you've been doing since kind of the beginning of the pandemic with your online events? So the history of it.
So it's kind of an interesting thing because back in well, I guess it would have been March-ish 2020 when it became evident that the world was changing. And I know that personally I had at least 2 or 3 in-person events I was supposed to be teaching at that were getting canceled. And, that was as someone who does this for a living, I was like, well, I don't get paid by anyone as a salary, so I need to find some replacements for these events that were disappearing. And then I suddenly realized, and all my colleagues that do the same thing for a living are in the exact same boat. So I'd read an article somewhere once about these things called virtual summits, where it was kind of a conference you do online. And the premise that they used was to make the classes available for free and then offer a paid option. Yeah. And I thought that was an interesting model. So I reached out to a bunch of my friends and colleagues that I've known and said, hey, I've got this crazy idea to throw this thing together. And it's like 5 days long, and you'll each teach 2 classes, and we'll give it away for free. And luckily, a lot of the people went, okay, I'm not doing anything else. So we did the first one in May of 2020, and very successful in the sense of lots of people signed up for the free pass, and then quite a few people decided to take advantage of the paid option. And that was our first Photoshop Virtual Summit. Since then, we've done a total of 4 Photoshop Virtual Summits and 2 Lightroom Virtual Summits.
Wow. You've done 4, haven't you? Because I think I did the second one.
Yep.
I was on the second summit. And I know, like, as each one's gone on, they've been an amazing success because so many people have talked about it. And I know you obviously know the amount of people that signed up. But not only that, the list of instructors has been great because you've been in the industry long enough to make good friends. And like you said, that first one was really kind of leap of faith because it's, hey,
it really was
an event. You've got to record content. We're going to give it away for free. Oh, and if people buy it, I can pay you.
Exactly. I look back now at that first email and thought, how did anyone ever say yes, other than they knew, well, again, I'm not doing anything else, because I literally, I think, said in that first email, if this many people sign up, you'll each make around this, but who knows? And luckily it went well enough that everyone was happy, and it was a nice replacement for the lost income from all those in-person events. And what I found most rewarding is the number of people, especially during the first year of the pandemic, who said the timing of this couldn't have been better because I've lost my job, or I'm on sabbatical, or I've been sort of put on hold, so I have no income, so I'd love to go to this. And if it was a paid only event, I couldn't attend. Yeah. So the fact that, and many people said things like, if I could, I would buy it, and I'll try to buy the next one. But right now, the fact that you're providing this for free, and the fact, of course, that meant that for many people, they actually had the time to sit at home and be safe and watch classes, so from that respect, it all went very well. But what's been also interesting is I kind of had this feeling like maybe this is something where the timing is right to do this during the pandemic. But as the world is starting to get back to normal and in-person events are starting to reoccur, I constantly get emails from people saying, gosh, I hope you're going to keep doing these virtual events, because for me, I live in, name a place, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Sweden. I can't come to the US to go to a in-person conference, just not possible. So I really hope you'll continue to do the virtual events, because it's an ideal solution for me. And it's not, I mean, even people in the US say, I just can't afford to take time off work, or, you know, the whole idea of travel and hotel and meals and versus sit at home in my pajamas with my dog sitting next to me and watch classes when I want, you know. So as I've said to many people, I'll keep doing these things until eventually people say, okay, we're done with the whole virtual
it's like one
thing.
Man and his dog turning up.
Exactly.
But that was the thing, is because that whole landscape changed with people realizing they had nowhere else to go and online content was the most accessible. But it kind of also made you think of, I'm not going to say the ridiculousness of it, but when you think the amount of effort you put in to go to an event, like you say, time off work, traveling, booking a hotel, and then on top of that, you pay for a ticket for an event. Sorry to anyone who's organising an in-person event this year, because I'm about to shut you down. But then you don't get to access every single class.
Right.
You only get to you know, you look through a day and think, okay, well, there's 5 sessions on at 9 o'clock, there's 5 at 11 o'clock. You can only go to one. So actually you look at it and think, oh, well, I've kind of got to miss that one, because they're rarely repeated. Apart from maybe Max repeat some. So really, you've got to also think, I'll put in all that effort and I'm actually only going to get to see probably 20% of the content for the same ticket price.
Well, there's that. And then the other side of it is that like Photoshop World, as an example, one of the things that we always took pride in was that we gave people this gigantic workbook with notes, which is great. But even then, it's not the same as being able to say, I wish I could watch that whole class again.
Yes.
To watch the instructor do the same things 3 times because I didn't quite get it. You know, so it's great to have notes. That's a big plus. But that to me is the other side, is an in-person one. You could sit through an amazing class and take what you think are perfect notes, and then a month later you look in your notes and it says hold down shift, and you're like, what does that mean? Like, what does that refer to? As opposed to, I'm going to go back and watch that recording because I purchased what we call the VIP pass to give you lifetime access, so then you can go back and rewatch the class. And if it takes you, if you're the kind of person where you want to watch it 5 times, there's no shame in that. You own it, so watch it as many times as you want. So I think that's the other aspect, is that people say, you know, obviously the nice thing about an in-person event is the person part, where you get to see people, you know, and you go to the socializing aspect of it, and that's great. But if you're really looking at the educational side of it, especially when it's software related or concepts that take you a bit of time to kind of really grasp, to me, the benefit of being able to watch and rewatch as many times as you feel you need to, you know, that's a big plus.
Yeah. And you can kind of schedule out, you know, because the classes are so diverse, because you have a really good range of instructors, there are so many aspects to learn. So there can be things like, oh, I'm kind of a little bit sketchy on that, I wish I could do that better. And then you've got that, I've never done that before. And you're going to learn from a Dave Cross, a Dan Gregory, Cara Plichini, you know, people who are experts in that field, and you get the best resource from it. And I think, am I right in saying what's the price of the VIP package?
So the VIP pass, we do right up until the event, it's $99 US, going up until the event starts. And once the event begins, so the regular price technically is $159.
Yeah.
And that's for lifetime access to all of the classes, as well as things that only VIPs get, like class notes and bonuses. This time around, the VIPs are actually getting 3 full classes that are bonus classes, including one well, actually, your class is a bonus to everybody, not just VIPs. So, but yeah, that's the, and one thing you said there that tweaked a thought in my head. It reminded me of an email that I got from someone that unsolicited, because I often ask for, can you give me, testimonials about the summit, but occasionally people just out of the blue send an email because they all must have been watching something.
Yeah.
And a woman emailed me, and it was a great email. I have to find it because it's a great thing to share with people. But she said something like, I'm at a point in my life where it takes me a while to learn things. So I would never have attended this class because it was a little more advanced. But now 6 months later, I feel like I'm ready to watch it. And that's the other side, is there might be things that at the time you're like, okay, this is a little over my head because I'm still learning layers or whatever it might be. But then 6 months from now, I might say, okay, now I feel like I'm ready to take on this class from this person who's taking it a little more advanced or getting a little more and taking it a different direction. I thought that's a really good point that I don't think of myself, is it's not just rewatch something. It might be, I'm going to put that off until I'm ready for it. And if at an in-person event, you would be like, well, I'm not going to go to the advanced class because I'm not ready for it. And then that's like, well, the end. There's no later on I will, because the event is over. So it's like, and that's one of the many reasons why I continue to say, well, like I said, until people stop signing up saying, okay, I think I'm over the virtual side, I think there's still enough reason to keep doing them and changing things up a bit, like we're doing with this upcoming one. The Photoshop Creativity Virtual Summit is taking a different, bit more of a slant. Instead of just being a Photoshop event that covers everything Photoshop, let's do something that's a little more focused on the creative side of using Photoshop.
And tell us more about that, because obviously this is kind of the first, you've done Photoshop and Lightroom. This is the first one where you've kind of stepped away from that, but you're still talking Photoshop,
right?
But tell us a little bit more about your thoughts of going into this area and what's going to be included, what people can look forward to.
Sure. So the thought kind of came from the number of people that said, when I would do surveys and get feedback about past summits, they're like, well, my favorite class was this, or the thing I'm most interested in. And there seemed to be a bit of a recurring theme that it was things like compositing and creating things that didn't exist and adding texture and being a more kind of fine art and things like that. So I thought, well, maybe you'll try doing something that focuses a little more on using Photoshop for the creative side. So for example, at a shall we call it traditional Photoshop Virtual Summit, we might have classes on like actions and automation, which is very useful for whatever you're doing in Photoshop. So we're probably not going to have that in this event, because it's more on the, how can I create something? How can I, excuse me, how can I generate artwork that didn't exist? And so I sat down with one of our past Photoshop Summit instructors, Sebastian Michaels, who runs a very successful website called Photoshop Artistry. And that's kind of what he does, is talks to people about the artistic side of Photoshop. And he had this, I give him full credit, because he had this idea. He said, what if we did the summit so the first day was all about inspiration and planning and being creative, that's generic to everything, not like Photoshop specific, but just with a bit of a Photoshop twist. So for example, some of our instructors will talk about a project they did in Photoshop, but really delve into the, how did I come up with the idea and how did I plan it out? And when I did the photo shoot, what was I thinking? So the first day is more on the kind of creation, ideas, preparation, that side of things. Then we got 3 full days of Photoshop magic from all these amazing people. And then the last day kind of bookends it by saying, well, now that you've got amazing artwork, what are you going to do with it? How do you share it on social media? How do you book a gallery show? How do you get great prints? How do you create unique works of art by taking something you've created in Photoshop, printing it, and then painting on top of it, or whatever it might be? So I'm really thrilled with the way it's worked out, because I think it's great for anyone who feels like they just want to take what they do up a notch, even if they never aspire to create works like Brooke Shaden or Bert Monroy or any of those people do. they just want to, maybe even as a landscape photographer, they just want to be a little more creative in what they're doing. There's still classes in here that will help that area, as well as those people who want to be a fine artist or sell their work or do a gallery show or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing, the curation of the classes. I know previously when you were doing the first initial Photoshop ones and you would say like, what kind of classes would you like to do? And then you've got to get that balance of covering lots of different areas, because you don't want 20 classes on selections,
right,
or retouching. And the reason like I love what you're doing is because every time anyone asks me to do any Photoshop class, I'm always banging on about, I'm not doing Photoshop, I'm not doing photography, retouching. Photoshop is a creative tool. Let's make some stuff in Photoshop that's creative. Let's do something that starts with a blank canvas rather than doing something to a photo. Now I'm going to bring in a photographer now. I'm going to bring in our good friend and my co-host, Mr. Hess, who's able to join us now. We're obviously talking, Alan, about Dave's new event, the Photoshop Creativity Virtual Summit. What are your thoughts as a photographer? We were just talking about how online summits have been useful for people who don't like being around people, or not going to not going to events at the moment. But we were just sort of saying how it's sort of changed the learning landscape, because you get the access to so many, you get access to all the classes, whereas we said, we go to an event, you don't get to see all the classes. Or as Dave also just said, some people aren't ready to learn that thing now, but by buying the course, by buying the sessions, they can learn later on. So I know you're
I think it's the most positive thing that's come out of the big change we had in the world in 2020, was that suddenly you had online content that was actually more focused, and it wasn't like, let's go see what you can find on YouTube. Or, I'm not saying there's anything bad with any of those guys, Jesus Ramirez is a great friend in the YouTube learning channel, all those things, but this is like, it's like the advantages of going to a conference without actually having to leave your house, or in my case, deal with other human beings, because I prefer just not to. That I take exception with the, like, Photoshop as a blank canvas to me is the scariest thing on the planet. Like, I just can't. I don't even know where to start with that. I don't open Photoshop. I click on a picture and it launches Photoshop for me. So that so there's that idea is kind of scary. I mean, it's really if as a photographer, my creativity comes with, I feel, with the camera, and then what I do with it afterwards is definitely a creative part, but it doesn't come out of nothing. I don't create stuff out of, that's why we have designers, Dave. And Dave.
That's why designers rule.
An interesting comment that came up, because I've been doing, I do schedule chats with all the instructors so they get a chance to talk about their classes. So there very shortly will be a page connected to the summit that has each instructor chatting about their ideas. And I can't remember who it was that said this now, because I've talked to so many people in the last day or so. But someone said, one of the things that I love is that I will watch someone who is a great artist do an amazing selection of fur that I could never do. And then it occurred to me, but I need to fix my sky on my landscape photo. And you know what? The same techniques I could apply to the little tiny leaves and branches.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a really good point, is that you don't have to take it verbatim to say, this is how you select fur. It's like, this is how you select something really challenging.
Yeah.
Or something that's difficult to achieve. And I think that's one of the thoughts that I have for photographers, is to say, even that you may never start with a blank canvas, but you might bring in a photo and say, well, now that I know I can selectively change areas because of the tools that are available, and if the automatic tools in Lightroom and Camera Raw, et cetera, don't quite do what you want them to, what next? So watching some of these talented artists, even though they're creating some fantasy composite, they're still using Photoshop layers and adjustment layers and masks and tools that the rest of us use too. Because I'm going to be the first to say, I can't wait to watch someone like Brooke Shaden or Bert Monroy or whoever it is, but I know I would never in my life create something like they do.
Well, Bert,
But just
Right.
Bert and
by
Aaron,
watching them, I'm picking up ideas.
yeah, two examples with Bert and Aaron that I say to people about their their particular style is, look, you are never going to create what Bert can create because that's Bert, and you're only going to create what Aaron can create if you've put in years of that expertise in animation and animal drawing. But what you will learn from each of them is the approach to the art. So quite often if I'm retouching and I have to build something into the image that's maybe broken, I think I've got to fill in some space. Or so when I watch Bert, I think of it, how he thinks, how he approaches drawing something. And same with Aaron, how's the light affecting this? How's the light affecting the color? How am I using this? Like, how can I best use this brush in a way I've never used it before? So it's not necessarily that you're going to learn to draw like Aaron Blaze and learn to create like Bert Monroy. It's you're going to learn techniques in what Photoshop can actually do and how they squeeze the most out of it. And it might be that you want to go and try animation, but I think from a technique point of view, it's how people just show you that tool that you never knew was there, or use it in a way you never thought you could.
Well,
Well, there's that, and the
So-
other side of it is because we're doing classes that are like John Paul Capernegro. He doesn't use Photoshop very much at all, but he's going to talk about what inspires him and how he thinks out, like if he's going somewhere to do a photo shoot, what is going through his head. And to
Yeah.
me, what could be better than looking inside the head of someone like that, just to hear what's going on inside there and how do they approach things. So that's why we scheduled the first day that if nothing else, I'd say to a photographer, if you have no interest in doing the, building from scratch or creating composites in Photoshop, then the first day and the last day are still built for you, because it's still about inspiration in general and then sharing your work in general, regardless of what that work might be. Even if you're a sculptor, there'll be things in there for you.
Well, I'm always amazed at how much you can pick up on workflow. So
Mhm.
I was a TA for Dave Cross at Max last year, and I got to see the same presentation 3 times or four times.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it, but I got home and I'm suddenly making selections because I'm literally just doing it muscle memory because I had seen it 3 times, helped people do it a couple of times, and now I'm like, oh yeah, that was so easy to do, and it's become an integral part of how I can suddenly remove things easily from pictures. And I was like, it never would have occurred to me to do that had I not been sitting in a Photoshop or designer's class,
Sure.
or sitting there doing it. And suddenly it was like, oh, that's a lot easier than I gave it. Like I'm in my head, I'm like, oh, that's going to be terrible, and I'm going to have to sit there for hours and try to do it. And Dave's up there in front of us and goes like, yeah, click here, and then do that. And it was like, oh my goodness, light bulb. So
It's
anyone
like
who
smart objects. Like when smart objects came out, Dave absolutely smashed it and went, oh, I'm going to show you how to do smart objects. And now I don't think I've ever worked in a single Photoshop project in the last 5 years that didn't have smart objects in it.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, that was part of the Max thing too.
Yeah.
So-
The other thing I love, Dave, as well is the fact that because I've done some different online events, where it's been kind of like a summit, where it's been a similar sort of format, is the thing I like is I get to plan a class, but I get to pre-record it, which means if I've got 45 minutes or an hour, every minute counts. Every second is going to be me showing you something. Whereas if I was on stage, there can be a distraction, there can be a breakdown, the laptop could spin, and you lose valuable time. The thing I love about this format is the fact that if you put the effort in, plan a good class, put the effort in, get great recording, lighting, everything, you're providing a really good quality tutorial for someone, because the visual and audio are good. And it is something you would want to watch again and again and again. Now, I know some events are going to try hybrid, and I don't quite know how that's going to work out, because I don't know that recording someone on a stage, like looking at a screen through a screen, kind of it's going to have the same effect as being able to watch a quality pre-recorded. And then I can be in the chat And if people have got questions while they're watching it,
Yeah.
I can answer them in real time without interrupting the class.
Yeah, no, that's one of the many reasons that, I've over time I've thought, should I be switching it up and having all the instructors do things live? And with almost without exception, every instructor says, please don't do that. I would much prefer, for two reasons. Obviously, it's from an instructor standpoint, as you said, it's a lot easier to go in and then you can look at it and say, I'm going to edit this down and maybe go back in and add something I didn't do the first time or whatever. But the other part of it is there's just the world we live in, we've all had that experience where everything's working fine. And then all of a sudden it's time to go live and the internet goes down or something. And all of a sudden there's no class from the instructor because nothing is, working the way it's supposed to. Yeah. So, if in the world of the virtual summits, each day there's a bunch of classes and each hour on the hour, a new class is released. But in the worst case scenario, if something goes wrong and it doesn't work for some reason, or the end user, their internet is bad, then wait 45 minutes and hit refresh. And there it is. There's no like, oh, darn, I've missed it because it was live and now it's finished. There are people all the time that contact me and say, what am I going to do? Because the class is at 8 Eastern time, but I live in Timbuktu where it's in the middle of the night. And I'm like, doesn't matter because you have 48 hours to watch the class.
Yeah.
So just sign up. As long as you're signed up, you'll get a notification with a link and then you just watch it when you can.
That's what I was going to say.
You don't miss anything by not being there at the very time it's released.
That's it. You don't have to be live. You can schedule it in within 48 hours. And, and a message so this is customer service, Dave speaking here. I'm not paid by Dave to say any of this, but the thing is also what you got to realize is, this is an event that requires a lot of planning and a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And Dave's got a lot of plates to spin. 48 hours with enough advance notice is enough time for you to plan whether you're going to be able to watch it or not. It's not going to be 72 hours. It's not going to be 4 days, 5 days a week. Everyone has different things in their life going on. But 48 hours is quite a generous amount of time to be able to check something out and watch it and, and schedule it, because, if you want to cram it all in and stay there all day in front of your computer and watch them, great, fill your boots, but be realistic about what your expectations are and what you're going to get, because the fact that it's free for 5 days and you get to see all the sessions 48 hours, it's, as Dave said, $99. How many sessions will there be, Dave?
So including your bonus session, that would be 36.
Okay, so if we do 99 divided by 36, that's $2.75 a class. Now, that's
wait, I got to change the price.
Yeah. So, that's $2.75 a class if you were to buy it leading up to the event. So, I'm not meaning this to sound like a sales pitch, but honestly, it's such an affordable way of learning if you break it down like that. The amount of classes you're getting, that there is 48 hours for you to watch some of the sessions, and I think honestly, after day one, you're gonna wish you'd bought the VIP package, because I know the quality of instructors that Dave's got. I know the quality of instructors that Dave's had in the past, and there's never going to be a dud session. It's going to be all killer, no filler. So look, you've got to look at it from a realistic point of view of what your expectations are and learning. And Dave can't put all this effort in and have everything running and do it for completely free, because it's unrealistic. So I think your price point is fantastic for the quality that you get.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I like to let people know, and just being very self-serving, is that this event is run by myself and my wife Marlene, and she handles any financial side. So basically everything else is me. So every so often I'll get an email saying, I need someone on your team to do this. And I'm like, that would be me. So, it's sponsored by Adobe and some other sponsors, but it's not an Adobe event. It's run by me. And that means every email and every help desk comes to me. So I get people who file a help desk ticket, and then immediately sent an email to me and said, I filed a help desk ticket. I'm like, yes, I know, because I got that too.
Yeah.
And, I get pretty much flooded, especially the first day, with people who are still confused by the time zones and I missed the live broadcast kind of thing, which I try to include in our FAQs and stuff. And I understand that for first timers, they're like, they want to make sure they don't miss anything. But it's because it's pre-recorded, it means that we try to treat it like as if it was an in-person event where every hour there's a new class being released. But again, there's no worry about, you don't have to set your alarm for 3:00 in the morning because, that they're going to be there. Now, I say that, but I can guarantee you right now, because it happens every time, the first day, because I tell people you'll get an email around 7:00 Eastern Daylight Time with a link to the classes. And when I wake up in the morning, I have 75 emails going, I haven't got my link yet. I'm like, that's because you live in a different country. But it's okay. You'll get it. It's all right. Don't worry. And then the second day, they're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah. Now, just to push the VIP side of things, because obviously I know the answer to this question, you don't just get the classes as a download to watch the classes, you get more. So
right.
what are the extras they can expect when they buy the VIP pass?
Sure. So basically the VIP pass includes lifetime access to all the classes. So you can watch those recordings as much as you want. And then every instructor, I ask them to provide some kind of class notes. And to be fair, that can be anything from a 1 or 2 page of bullet notes to Lisa Carney, who writes a 75-page book, because that's what Lisa does. So there's no guarantee of what that will be, but there'll be something to help you to augment the class. Also, because I decided to the first time, and now I keep doing it, no one's ever said whether they actually use this or not, but I have audio only versions of every classes in case someone wants to. It's probably actually more applicable this time, because there will be classes that are, you don't have to be watching a class to hear someone talk about being inspired and creativity, but that's also available. And then typically every instructor provides some kind of bonus, and that bonus could be, here's 10 of my favorite brushes I created, or here's some textures, or here's an add-on to my class where I taught 45 minutes and then I realized, I could do another 10 minutes on this little extra thing. So it's kind of a bonus material. So I don't even know what all those are yet, because every instructor, some of them just as they're doing their class, they think, I could do this as a bonus. And then they provide like a PDF cheat sheet or an action or whatever it might be. So those are kind of bonus goodies, shall we say. But certainly the main thing is the class recordings, access to the class recordings and the notes. For most people, that alone is what they're really paying for, and the rest is just gravy.
And aren't there 3 extra sessions?
Right. This time around, there's 3 full classes that are extra. So Aaron Blaise is doing an extra class. And then I have Renee Robin, who technically doesn't appear on the instructor list, but she kind of contacted me and said, is there any way? And I was like, yes, let's get you in here and do a bonus class. And then Sebastian Michaels is also doing another. And these are full-blown classes that are for VIPs exclusively. Is that
on top of the ones you just said that I divided $99 by?
Right. So it's actually, so 3 more. So basically it's 36, so 39. So it's
so
goes down
just
to
reduce that. It's now
it's down $2.68 or something.
That's nothing. The other thing as well is I always like to encourage people. This is marketing, Dave, is if you do attend this event, or really any event, anything you do you know what one thing it's just really nice to do? And I know I do this, is give Dave some feedback. Okay, because the success of events like this is built on what customers liked, disliked, had problems with, good, bad, or ugly. Just drop Dave an email and just say, what did you get out of it? Was there a success? Did it help you in your role at work? Did you start a new hobby? Did you start something new in Photoshop you never done before? And let Dave know, because I know from stuff I've done that the nicest thing to get is an email from someone that just says, hey, thanks for that. I was really struggling with this. You got me over that barrier. And now I've kind of got the confidence to do this.
Yep.
Those emails are worth so much more than anything else, because you can not only, feel good about it, because I'm sure you're absolutely cream crackered at the end of a week when you finish and you and Marlene sit down with a drink and go, but it's nice to see that and know that, okay, well, there's a desire for this, and also the next event I can make around the kind of things you want. No, so me personally, I would love to see a graphic design summit. I would like to see the kind of things you can make and do with Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign, the creativity side of it, and that's something that I know I would be invested in and learn. I know it's a thing that a lot of people struggle with.
Sure.
I know, there's new software coming out. I mean, the day we're speaking is Adobe have just dropped this whole brand new thing called Firefly, which is all about AI. And then in the next year, people are going to be teaching how to use AI. They're going to be teaching all these new Adobe Expresses, all these new things coming in all the time. We're in a really weird time because we're being bombarded with so much creativity in terms of tools that it can be overwhelming. So I think to have people who can break it down for you nice and easily, and like, how can this work for you? How can you adopt this in your workflow? How can this make this task easier? It's going to be great for everyone, because it's a lot at the moment.
Yeah, for
more
sure.
than we ever had 25 years ago.
That's right. So if we can go back to the send Dave an email with feedback thing, I love that idea, but I would add a slight little
caveat.
Thank you, to that. And that is, no, it will never be more than 2 days for free. Because every time I get emails going, I love the summit, can you make the classes free for a week or two? And it's like, no. So that, and also, unfortunately, I'd love to be able to do this, but people have asked, is there any way I can buy just certain classes? Because I looked at the summit and I really like these 4 classes, but not the rest. So the sarcastic side of me says, sure, it's $99 and you get the rest for free.
Yeah.
That was the answer that popped into my head. I was like, it's 105.
Just being selfish again, knowing the software that I use to create the summit, it doesn't have any ability to make like a shopping cart of pick and choose kind of thing. So unfortunately, as much as I'd like to do that, that is not an option. And then frankly, that's one of the reasons why it's priced the way it is, because we don't really expect that every single person will say, gosh, every 30 something classes is perfect for me, but hopefully 10 or 15 or 5 or whatever the number is, that even 5 classes for the price we charge still is a good investment if it's going to help you get better at what you want to get better at.
Absolutely. Everything. Me and Alan have had this conversation with so many guests where don't look at it like I always hate that it's too expensive. It's not. Is it affordable? Because everyone's circumstance is different. Is it affordable? And then the second thing is, you will spend money on looking after your phone, and spend money looking after your car, and spend money looking after all these things. But you need to spend money on yourself sometimes to improve yourself. So it's an investment in your ability. And, if you do it as a hobby, fine, you don't make money from it. So what value do you put on the satisfaction you get from doing this as a hobby? If you're making money from it, it's a no-brainer. $99 to teach you one new thing that you can sell to a customer that you probably charge them $99 for, it's paid for itself. So that whole thing of, I want it for free. Well, if you want that much for free for that long, you're probably not making money out of it. It is just really a kind of a hobby, but you just kind of want it at your leisure. It's like when I said that it was a photography show. They're not doing an event this year because they wanted to go back to having it in March, and because the last one was September, they couldn't do it in March because it was 2 in the same year budgeting. So they said, we're going to go back to the March date. Here's the dates. We're going to miss you for the year, but we look forward to seeing you in 2024. And then you think, like, all the planning, all the marketing for this giant event with 35,000 people over 3 days. And then like Trevor from Banbury goes, oh, well, actually, I'm shooting a wedding that weekend. This isn't ideal for me. So I just want the photography show like to come out and go, actually, sorry, we just announced the show was going to be on this week on, but Trevor from Banbury is shooting a wedding. So we're actually going to change the dates. So you might have an inconvenience in your life that means you can't access something, but it doesn't mean the whole event will change just because of your situation.
Right.
So bear that in mind.
Oh, and I get emails quite often from someone saying, I see your summit is, these dates, like in this case, April 17th to the 20th. Well, I'm going to be out of the country. Is there any way that I can still see it? I'm like, well, in this case, actually, yes. That's the whole point. That's the other point of a VIP pass is for that reason too. It's not just to be able to rewatch something, but it's your only way to watch it because of your travel schedule or work schedule or whatever it might be. So
yeah, I'm sorry I didn't check your vacation schedule, Mr. Smith.
Exactly. Please, everyone submit your itinerary and we'll pick the best date. It'll take me a year and a half to figure it all out, but
yeah,
we'll do our best.
3 years later, and then someone gets I have had a last minute thing, I can't make it. Is there any chance?
All right, we'll push everything back a day. Yeah. One thing I would say to everyone, though, in all seriousness, is especially the people that are hearing us talk about all this and like, well, I'm going to go look at the schedule and see the classes. But as I mentioned earlier, I've been having these chats with the different instructors to get them to talk about their classes. I highly recommend you go and look at that. It should be ready early next week because I have chats coming up until Friday when we're recording this. But so far, I got to say, listening to Brooke Shaden talk about her class, I can't wait to see that one. Listening to Richard Sturtevant talk about how he takes prints that he makes and then he draws and paints on top of them to make an original piece of art that never existed before. Fascinating. Listening to Bert talk about his process of how he prepares and goes on Google Maps and looks at the street view and different angles to find the right shadow. And I mean, just in like those off the top of my head, but every one person has been so excited and so passionate about what they're going to be teaching that even for, again, as I said before, I'm never going to do artwork like Brooke does.
No.
But I can't wait to hear her talk because she's doing a talk where, and for people who've never seen Brooke, she's 30-ish. I'm not sure of her exact age, but she has the soul of an 80-year-old who's seen life. Like, it's amazing, like the way she talks about things and talks about your life's purpose. And it's just fascinating stuff that goes well beyond, I'm going to take a layer, I'm going to do this. And that's what excites me about this event is it's great Photoshop stuff mixed in with some really interesting people who are so artistic and creative and are going to share that. I really feel that they're going to be people that they'll watch these classes and it really will be life-changing for them because they'll go, I'd never thought of it that way. Now I'm excited to try whatever it is, even if it's, like I said before, sculpting or, it doesn't have to be Photoshop or, putting a mouse on a mouse pad. It could be anything you want, but that's what I think is going to be great about this event.
It's like online. I mean, like we said, throughout the pandemic, there was a lot more online content where you had the opportunity to spend more time investing in, oh, well, actually, I'll go and watch this. And one of the ones I was talking about at work was cookery. I said, the company I work for had record sales during the pandemic because they sell cookware. And people were going online and taking cookery lessons and learning how to cook dishes they've never cooked before, from looking at dishes from countries they've never been to. And if you enjoy cooking and you go on and watch all these different cooking styles, that's really kind of the same with Photoshop. You enjoy using a product, but you're going to learn different recipes and you're going to watch people who, I'm going to watch Gordon Ramsay and Jamie Oliver. Doesn't mean I'm ever going to cook like them, but I enjoy watching their process and I'll come away with one or two little tips from it. Is think about stuff like that, how you would approach any other thing, because for some reason the creative world seems to be like this weird mental blockage with people where it's it's going to teach them something that's going to make them better, but they'd rather spend the money on Netflix and spend their hours sat on the backside binge watching 9 seasons of The Office for the third time. So it's the consumable content is great because there's always a takeaway. Like you say, you watch Brooke or you watch John Paul, it's just entertaining. It's just nice to sit and absorb someone else's history, experience. And it doesn't have to be that you're going to walk away and start absolutely creating that thing they're going to do. And that's what I like about the diversity of this particular summit that you're doing, is because of there are people I know of that I've never seen them before. I've never seen them teach. I know their work, but it'd be good to see them as a person, how they convey that information.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a big fan of the kind of the online training now, just because I've learned a ton. I know I've learned a ton, and I've enjoyed doing it. I've never really liked being particularly on camera until I sort of started this little journey with Photoshop World and NAPP, and getting involved with different people and events. Now I absolutely love if I'm invited to do something, because I love planning it. I love looking at the things that I can teach, and it's become a nice way I love traveling. I mean, as you know, I came and saw you 2 weeks ago, because I get to come over and do that. But I think you can definitely sense the enthusiasm from instructors, because it is a medium they do enjoy using now to teach, rather than having to stand on stage and have things go wrong. How have you found, because you like Alan said, you were at Adobe Max teaching, how do you view the in-person side of it now that you've not only done the summits, but you've kind of got to a point where I don't want this to sound like a negative answer or put any events down, but what are your thoughts now you've done this on the in-person, on you doing in person?
Well, so obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but from my background standpoint, I started in person because 30 something years ago, that's all there was. So I kind of made my living doing classes and seminars and workshops and in-person things, and that's always been my favorite thing. And I got to be honest, the first couple of times someone said, I want you to record a class, so you're basically teaching to that camera over there and not getting any visual feedback from anyone as to whether it's making sense or not. So when I went back to Max this time, it was my first time doing an in-person event in a couple of years. And at first, I got to say, it was a little odd standing up there and seeing faces that weren't in little Zoom boxes. They were, and some of them actually came up and talked to me like 4 feet away. And I was like, whoa, a person asking me a question. So I don't think I'll ever stop doing them, but at the same time, there was the aspect, because Max is in Los Angeles and I live in Florida, so it's a long travel, especially coming back this way. And so the good part is, especially if you've been to events before and you're a social kind of person, you get to talk to people, and in my case, see colleagues and friends I haven't seen in a while. So that part of it obviously was great. But I've always said that, because over the years I've had people say, I want to teach an online course. What steps do you think I should do? And I always surprise people by saying, well, the first thing is, if you can, teach it in person to a few people.
Yes.
Because there's nothing like that when you're saying something and you look at the 4 people and they all are making a face going, huh? Even if they don't say anything, you can tell, okay, I need to reiterate how I say that again or something. So I think that at least initially, that's a good exercise. Now, obviously, the more you do it, you plan it out and you get confidence that what I'm saying is going to work, because it's similar to things I've taught before, or I have a certain way of explaining things and give examples and stuff like that. So I hope that what'll continue to happen is that we'll have our virtual events like the ones I do, and then in addition have an in-person one just frequently enough
Yeah.
to renew those friendships and give people a handshake or a hug or whatever, and then say, okay, see you online.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's why I come over to America so much, because most of the decent events are over there. But I'm so lucky that I've got such a good amount of friends now through doing it. That is one of the nice things about coming to Max is, it is me, I'm coming further than Florida. I've got kind of like
Sure.
me to Florida and Florida again. And Alan knows, because we've both been TAs at Max for probably 4 or 5 years now, is the people side of it. The last Adobe Max, apart from teaching in Russell's class, and I was a TA for one design class, I didn't attend any classes at Max, because I helped Aaron Draplin out on his booth on the floor. And because I was on the booth and he gets so much traffic, I was able to speak to so many more people than I would have done. That it's not to say that I was nothing I couldn't learn, because I even learned something in the InDesign class that I sat in on. But that is one of my favorite things about it, is not necessarily, it's a great feeling. I mean, Kelby one gave me my first opportunity to teach. And then the second year, when I got what I call the big boys room, I've got a great photograph that I can go straight to of you, me, Glyn and Corey. And it was such a thrill that I'm teaching next to the people I learned from and respect so much, that there is a bit of a thrill being on stage. It was something I'd never planned to do. So I do enjoy that thrill of connecting, and that it isn't like the Brady Bunch in front of you. It is a 3D audience that goes back into the distance. But
so the one thing I will add to that is that I tend to use a lot of humor in my classes, and there's certainly in person, there's that instant reward, hopefully, of people laughing. And even on Zoom, it's weird because you make a comment and then there's all these muted boxes and there's a slight delay and they're like, and then you see the muted of them hopefully laughing, but it's just kind of a weird. It's almost like, remember many years ago I taught when I was living in Canada, in the Canadian government, most things are done bilingually, English and French. So I was teaching a bunch of people, and they only told me like moments before I was teaching that there was going to be a translator. So everyone, and a lot of people in the room, had an earpiece. So I would say something and go, ha ha, and then there'd be like this, ha ha, because the translator was like trying to say a joke in French that hopefully came across the same way as it did in English. Which reminds me of a story Bert told me years ago, where he was teaching in Japan, and they had a translator there, and he also likes to be humorous, and he mentioned that he was telling jokes and he was getting no reaction, and he couldn't figure it out. So he talked to the organizers, and they said, in Japan, people are a little more reserved. They don't tend to like laugh out loud, unless it's a very particular circumstance. So don't be offended if no one reacts. So then his next session, he got up and, without thinking, early on, told a joke, and there was a slight delay, and then the whole room burst out laughing. And he was like, oh, they're warming up to me. So after the class, he talked to the translator and he said, so what was it about that joke? And he goes, oh no, I told them Bert Monroy has told a joke. Please laugh now. So everyone laughed because they had been told, please laugh now. Like, he didn't actually say what the joke was. He just told them to laugh.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So that's talking about getting lost in the translation. He didn't even bother trying to translate the joke. He just told them to laugh.
Yeah, I remember I did an online one where there was attendees, but because I was doing it live, like at the moment I can see you two. So that's the beauty of doing it this way, but I couldn't see any of the audience, and I knew I had a couple of funny things in my presentation that I thought I'm going to do anyway. But like you say, it was absolute silence, and you allow yourself this kind of moment for the laughter to fill. So I did it, and then I got to the end of the session, and I didn't have the chat on either, so I wasn't even seeing the chat. I just had a full screen of teaching, and I got to the end, and I really felt deflated. It was like I could feel the air going out of me. And then the guy said, Oh, Dave, they are absolutely loving it. You killed them with that joke. You should have seen them. They were losing it. They were laughing. The comments were all, "Oh my God, that was so funny." And I was just like, it puffed me back up again. But it was, God, that was so hard not getting that while I was
Yeah,
doing
right.
it. Because it's like when you're stood in the crowd and you've got 300 people going, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And then you've got, you know, Chad at the front with his arms folded, nodding his head. You only see him. So it's kind of good not seeing them, but there is that thing of, like, it goes back to the feedback thing.
Yeah.
It's oh look, I'm teaching, they're learning, that interaction. So
That
but
reminds me of my very early days when I first started teaching. So I was still kind of getting a feel for things, but my natural tendency was to try and be humorous. And it was a small group of probably 30 people. And early on in the day, I was starting to say a few things, and the whole room was reacting. And there was this one woman right in front that was just staring at me with this very stern, almost looked annoyed face. So I started to get a little worried. And then it became my mission. Besides teaching the class, I wanted her to crack a smile. So I was like standing on my head, tap dancing, doing whatever, trying to get her to react. And she did not react at all. And it was a day-long session. So I was starting to get, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong here? Because everyone else is seeming to react. So anyway, the class ended. And I swear, the moment I said, "Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the class," her face beamed. She said, "Oh my God, that was the best class I've ever been in." And I was like, well, maybe you should tell your face then. So I guess that was her "I'm really concentrating" face, but it looked a lot more like, you know what, face, because it was just like, and I was just like, I was exhausted at the end thinking, whew, I worked so hard just for this one person. And then realized that she's the type of person where when she's concentrating, she looks angry.
I thought you were going to say, this woman, she just stared at me. There was nothing. And I swore to myself, that's the last time I invite my wife to sit in the front row.
Hey, I did that. The first time I taught a Photoshop world, I put my wife in the audience. I made her come to Vegas and I made her sit in my classroom. You have to get out of the lazy river. You have to come here just for this one thing and sit in the middle of the room, because if I need to look at someone that I know, you need to be there. And, granted, she did. Then she said it was boring. So I said, don't come back.
Well, no, like Alan, you used to teach. I mean, you've taught at Photoshop World. You used to do the pre-con.
Yeah.
I know the answer to this, but standing up in front of people wasn't something I know you wanted to do.
No, I actually really dislike being the center of attention at all. So being up and having to have people look at me was really right up there with like going to the dentist and having teeth drilled, and I had a rash of things that if things could go wrong, they would. I had headphones that kept falling off. I had to tape one of them to the side of my head one day so that the microphone would stay up. I actually enjoyed, I had to literally tape it, Dave, to my face so that the microphone would stay, because it wouldn't sit around my ear.
I thought you were just going to say you had a rash, like because of the anxiety.
That might explain a few things. I actually really enjoy the helping from the back of the room stuff, where I see someone who's having a problem, they're just not getting it, and you can go and do a little one-on-one, for 15, 20 seconds, a minute or two, and just get them back on track. And I always thought that was one of the things that Adobe Max does that was just so well done, was that they have these TAs in the back of the room, so the class doesn't have to stop. You don't have to, the instructor doesn't get derailed, but you can get that little help. We're getting like, you're not derailed, but you're semi derailing, and so we can help get you straightened up. And that was kind of the thing that I enjoyed doing, more than being in front of the room. You guys can be up in front. I kind of like sitting in the back.
The TA thing's quite good. I do enjoy that. So yeah, Dave, obviously, when is this amazing event taking place, and where can people find out more about it?
So April 17th to the 20th is the dates. Free passes are available right now, and as well as VIP passes if someone's interested in that. If you go to the main website, and you'll provide a link in the show notes, I assume. So people can go to that main page where you'll see all the instructors and what they're teaching, as well as a link to that chat page where it'll be all the instructor chats, which again should be up probably by Monday, I think. And as well as information on the VIP pass and the FAQ and all that good stuff. And once you sign up for a free pass, that automatically puts you on the email list. So then any further communication will come in automatically, including each day of the summit. An email comes in with a link to that day's classes, which is how you access the actual content.
Yeah. Well, leading up to the event, because I think we've got at least 3 more podcasts that will be out before then, I'm going to run an ad at the start of the podcast just to remind people of it, just as we're leading up to it. So obviously, if there's any social media stuff, we'll share it as well. But listen, Dave, I wish you the best of luck on this, because I know this one deserves it. And on the back of what you've already built, I'd urge anyone who's curious, just sign up for the free one. It's not going to cost you anything. Look at the itinerary, look at the instructors, and even if you, like say, just pick a couple a day to watch, and sort of look at what else is there. And if you get a feel for, actually, do you know what? Like I said, $99 up to I think it's $99 up to the day of the event. Isn't it?
Noon on the first day.
Yeah.
That early bird price, which is another little thing that I did, because most events typically early bird price ends like a week before or something like that. But I decided to give people that little extra time so they could at least watch a few classes and get a feel for things, and then hopefully help them make the decision to purchase.
And if for any reason,
that was going to be my question.
Yes,
literally, that was like, I'm gonna, when's the last moment? When can you pull that trigger? So
it's noon Eastern
day.
Daylight Time.
Yeah, and after the event, it's still very affordable. I think it's
$159 is the regular price, and basically it's available up until 2 days after the end. So April 22nd is the last day, and I always like to help people, or at least let people know that there's no, well, if I wait until later, is there a special discount? No, it's from that respect, it's like an in-person event. Once the event is over, you can't buy it anymore because it's done. So we go 2 days after so April 22nd in this case would be the last day to purchase a VIP pass if you decide to wait until then.
I was going to say, for people listening, that you can't come back a week, 2 weeks later. There is a cut-off date, and that's how Dave's able to make it affordable as he can. So listen, Dave, thanks for being on the show. It's always a pleasure having you on and chatting about all this. And
my pleasure.
I'll get my class over to you very shortly, because I'm currently going through planning, checking everything works, and making it as good as possible. But awesome. So it's I urge everyone to click on the link in the show notes, go and check Dave out, and like I said, if you do take part, please give him some feedback, and we'll have you back on again very soon to talk about more Photoshop things.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
All right, thanks.